Okay, everybody, I want you to imagine right now a hurricane. We all know what a hurricane looks like. It's got broad bands of just incredible weather, if you will. There's rain and there's lightning and there's thunder and there's hail and there's limbs falling off and wind and the bushes are swaying and maybe trees are even falling. That's the power of a hurricane. Now, imagine we're going to call this hurricane Bob. Now, what are we going to do? Why do we call this thing Bob? Why did we bother? Why do we bother to name it at all? And the point is, it's just like human beings. What you are is a whole bunch of patterns, right? You've got you've got your respiratory system. You've got the skeletal system. You got all these systems. What are these systems? They're patterns, and they work together. And then you've got a breathing pattern, right? Separate from everything else, just a breathing pattern. You've got a pulse pattern. You've got all these blood pressure patterns and this and that and the other. What you are is, we're talking about the unit now, not what you are, but what the unit is. What the unit is, it's a composition of patterns, and they're more or less working together as they, at least from our point of view, they're working together to form this hurricane. But if you want to talk about a hurricane, you've got to have a name for the hurricane. Which hurricane are you talking about, Fred? Hurricane Bob. And that's what we're going to call this hurricane. We're going to call this Hurricane Bob. So let's call it here Hurricane Bob. Hurricane Bob is composed of broad bands of heavy weather, and it feels like the very essence of Hurricane Bob should be right in the dead center of those strong weather bands. Yet when the weather department flies a plane into a hurricane, they fly in there, and I've seen it on television. Maybe you have too. You can see the plane. If you're on the inside of the plane, you can see it begin to move like this. It's just taking a beat, but it can goes down through. But the winds just get stronger and stronger the closer you get to the eye, closer you get to the center. So it just feels for all the world like once you get to the center, it's just going to like be an explosion or something. There's just everything's going to fall apart. But what happens is when that jet punches, or that prop plane punches through the wall, the outer the wall surrounding the eye, it punches through, and guess what? You're in the eye, and the eye is quiet. It's very quiet. It's incredibly quiet. I've seen one. I've been in one, and it's what it really is. It's not just some kind of weather. It's an absence of weather, if you will. It's just still as can be. Might be a little breeze or something, but basically it is still. It is quiet. The storm appears to have gone away. But when my mother let me out, she told me don't stay out there long, and because the storm is coming back. And sure enough, it did. The storm came back. But this Hurricane Bob what is there a center to this hurricane? Well, the center to the hurricane is an absence of hurricane, and the center to Fred, there's an absence to here too. There's all these patterns that you're seeing and you're hearing, you're listening to, you're watching and the patterns you can't see, like again the respiratory or the digestive system or something like that. Everything's going on. Nobody's directing it. Nobody's giving their permission for it to happen. It's just happening. So, but if in order to tell one hurricane from another, we name them, and then we're naming this one Bob, just like this one was named Fred. Why? So it wouldn't be confused with the other infants. They had to put a tag on it that said Fred because it looked like all the other infants, but it was a special infant for one family for a while. It got to be a reviled thing. But at any rate, so what you are is you are like the hole in the donut. Yeah. Which is you're no thing. You're not this thing or that thing. You're not composed of two things or four things. You are nothing. And what are you composed of? Nothing. Nothing. I call it no thing so I don't get it confused, and because I want to point out the difference between what we think of when we think of uh, hurricanes and what we actually experience. So when we think of a hurricane, we think of this one thing, right? And it's just moving up and down. There was a Hurricane Fred here a couple of years ago. It was a lot of fun to watch for me. I just cracked up every time I cut on the television. So I got to watch Hurricane Fred as it moved up the coast. It was different from any other hurricane, you know, Danny or whatever the last one was, or Edward or whatever the E was. The so you're just like that. You're a bunch of patterns, and it looks like there's something in the center. It feels like to you that there's something in the center, and that what that something is you've heard you call it Fred, right? I call it Fred. We can call it Fred, but it's not a Fred. There was no Fred born here. There was an infant born, and they had to call it something as not confuse it with all the other infants. So they said we'll call it Fred. And from then on, these patterns became known as Fred. And the whole pattern thing was just forgotten. But that's what's here. There's no center here. There's no Fred here. There is not. I know it looks like it, it sounds like it, all of that, but that's just what you're looking at is the unit. And they told you right from the very beginning of non-duality, you are not the body. And guess what I'm telling you? You are not the body. This is a bunch of patterns. It's not anybody's patterns. They're just patterns. They work together for a while and then they blow out just like a regular hurricane or tornado does. So if you can think of yourself as a verb and not a noun, these patterns are verbing. Hurricane Fred is hurricaning, it's fretting, whatever you want to call it. It's fretting as it goes along the coast. There's motion. It looks like there's one thing there, and we call it the one thing, but we call it the one thing in the same way that we would say a tribe of people. What does the tribe mean? Does it mean one thing? Yes, it does, but it also mean many things composed of that composing that one thing. Yes, it means many things and one thing. So it's not just one thing, it's many things also. And our problem is we think we are just this. We think we are just the unit. And we completely have, it's just been brainwashed out of you by kind people, well-meaning people, been brainwashed out of you ever since you were born. They started saying, for me, they started saying, hey, it's Fred, it's Fred. Look at that. There's Fred. Hi, Fred. Bye, Fred. Sit down, Fred. Stand up, Fred. Come here, Fred. Go away, Fred. Fred, 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 Fred. And what happened over here is that this little infant body was watching all this happening, and then sooner or later it began to catch on, and it said, "Oh, they're calling this Fred." And when it did this, it felt a body. And oh, they're calling this. Oh, I see. Oh, there's a me here. I didn't know there was a me here. And now that there's a me here, guess what else is here? There's an other. And that's the beginning of duality. Is that there's a me and a not me. But that's not true. There's only me. And you can say there's only me. You'll be 100% correct. If anybody says, no, you're not, well, you already know you're me, so you know they're crazy. But if I said my name is Fred and someone said, no, it's not, and they're not going to be able to convince me otherwise. I know that I'm Fred until the day that I came to see that I wasn't. And that's what this is all about, this awakening. It's about you coming to see, to know that oneness means oneness. You are that oneness. You've got, God only knows how many hurricanes in you. Thanks. Bye-bye.